All right, folks, look, this is easily one of the most sickening stories you'll see in politics right now, and it speaks to the utter incompetence of Donald Trump and MAGA Pete Hegseth. We're now learning through exclusive reporting from the Washington Post that Pete Hegseth essentially committed murder with some of his actions. They write that Hegseth's order on the very first Caribbean boat strike, Trump is targeting all these boats saying they're carrying drugs, his order was to kill them all. And then after they struck the boat, they saw two men clinging to the wreckage and they struck it again. That is murder. That is a war crime. And we're going to call it out in this article. It's so important that you see this and share this information around. It is vital. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe below to stay up to date with all of the news coming out about this and, of course, many other things in the Trump admin. Drop a like on the video, comment. Let me know what you think about the story. Always excited to hear from you folks. And let's just get into this because this is truly sickening. The longer the U.S. surveillance aircraft followed the boat, the more confident intelligence analysts watching from command centers became that the 11 people on board were ferrying drugs. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a spoken directive. According to two people with direct knowledge of the operation, the order was to kill everybody. One of them said, a missile screamed off the Trinidad coast, striking the vessel and igniting a blaze from the bow to stern. For minutes, commanders watched the boat burning on a live drone feed. As the smoke cleared, they got a jolt. Two survivors were clinging to the smoldering wreck. The Special Operations Commander overseeing the September 2nd attack, the opening attack in the Trump admin's war on suspected drug traffickers in the Western Hemisphere, ordered a second strike to comply with Hegseth's instructions. Two people familiar with the matter said the two men were blown apart in the water. Hegseth's order, which has not been previously reported, adds another dimension to the campaign against these suspected drug traffickers. Some current and former U.S. officials and law of war experts have said that the Pentagon's lethal campaign, which has killed more than 80 people to date, is unlawful and may expose those most directly involved to future prosecution, as it should. As it should. I mean, you're on this live feed. You're watching this boat that is suspected of carrying drugs, right? Suspected. You don't know for certain. And then your thought is to kill them all, to launch a drone strike. And then once you see survivors, strike them again. That is what we call murder. That is what we call a war crime. First and foremost, Donald Trump striking these boats in international waters is legally perilous in and of itself. That is bad enough. But when you're striking them with the intention to eliminate every single one, and then you have a situation where you see survivors and you make sure to strike them, that is illegal. That is illegal. They can't even claim that they were just striking the boat to get rid of the illicit substances that they think were on the boat. They struck them again to get rid of the two people who were still clinging on, blowing them apart in the water. This is a major scandal we're talking about here, and the reporting coming out about this stuff is just sickening. The alleged traffickers posed no imminent threat of attack against the United States and are not, as the Trump admin has tried to argue, in an armed conflict with the U.S., these officials and experts say, because they're not. Because they're not. These little boats that they're talking about in these feeds, they'd have to stop and refuel 20 times to get from South America to Florida. And apparently Donald Trump thinks they're lightning speed to the United States with all these illicit substances. It is not true. Because there is no legitimate war between the two sides, killing any of the men in the boats amounts to murder, said Todd Huntley, a former military lawyer who advised Special Operation Forces for 7 years at the height of the U.S. counterterrorism campaign. Now, Todd Huntley is somebody that should be in the room, somebody that is honest about these matters, but I imagine that if they have an attorney in the room, that attorney is probably in the pocket of Donald Trump and will say whatever and do whatever. Even if the U.S. were at war with the traffickers in order to kill all the boat's occupants, if they were no longer able to fight, would in essence, according to Huntley, be an order to show no quarter, which would be a war crime. This report is based on interviews with and accounts from 7 people with knowledge of the strike. Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell declined to address questions about his order. Quote, this entire narrative is completely false, he said in a statement. Ongoing operations to dismantle narco-terrorism and to protect the homeland from deadly drugs have been a resounding success. They believe that striking 2 people clinging onto a boat that's burning already is a resounding success. The elite counterterror group SEAL Team 6 led the attack, according to people with knowledge on the matter. The commander overseeing the operation from Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Frank M. Mitch Bradley, told people on the secure conference call that the survivors were still legitimate targets because they could theoretically call other traffickers to retrieve them and their cargo. Not sure what phone they're picking up when they're in the middle of the Caribbean Sea to call other people, but regardless, he ordered, and by the way, even if that's the belief, then why don't we arrest them? Why don't we have boats on site to go arrest them and prosecute them and give them due process as everybody is afforded, not strike them again? He ordered the second strike. He was the one who did it. That fulfilled Hegseth's order to kill everybody. Later in the day, Donald Trump released a redacted 29-second surveillance video showing the attack, but the video does not include any footage of the subsequent strike on the survivors, which people with knowledge of the situation said the American people would be horrified if they saw, and that's why Donald Trump didn't release the footage. And this is Mitch Bradley, the man who launched the attack. Speaking a day after the first strike, Hegseth told Fox News he watched the live video feed, saying, "We knew exactly who was in the boat. Really. We knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew exactly who they represented." And that was Tren de Aragua. That's the terror or the gang that they've targeted, a narco-terrorist organization designated by the United States. But in classified briefings to members of Congress, Pentagon officials have not provided any specific names of traffickers or syndicate leaders they have targeted, lawmakers have said, nor have they publicly released further information beyond these surveillance videos. Current and former officials within the U.S. and DEA have expressed doubt that all 11 people aboard the first vessel were complicit in trafficking. The boat in question, a go-fast vessel with 4 motors, is common in the region and would be typically manned by a small crew. Perhaps one mechanic, a driver or 2, and another person focused on security. More people on board means less room to carry illicit substances. This individual assessed that 11 people, this expert, a DEA official, assessed that 11 people may have been a mix of drug runners and illegally trafficked immigrants. So, theoretically, I mean, not even theoretically, it's almost more likely that most people or some people on the boat were not trafficking illicit substances, or at least they didn't know about it, meaning that they are innocent. And Pete Hegseth and the Department of Defense and all the people they have in there now ordered for everybody on board to be killed without knowing the specifics of anything. And here is a quote that I wanted to read you from Seth Moulton, a representative from Massachusetts, a Democrat. "The idea that the wreckage from one small boat in a vast ocean is a hazard to marine traffic is patently absurd, and killing survivors is blatantly illegal." Correct. Quote, "Mark my words, it may take some time, but Americans will be prosecuted for this either as a war crime or outright murder." And we're looking at you. We're looking at you, Mitch Bradley and Pete Hegseth, for this, because this is unacceptable. And you're wondering why the Department of Defense, now the Department of War, and Pete Hegseth are so focused on everything else other than this story, such as court-martialing Mark Kelly. It's because they're interested in a distraction. It's because they want to launch these BS investigations of people like Mark Kelly, who simply used his First Amendment right to tell the military not to follow illegal orders because they don't want people paying attention to this story, where they are, in essence, committing murder. That's what it is. And it is just sickening that this is the state of our country, where this is not only permitted in the federal government by Donald Trump, but celebrated. I mean, they all posted the footage on Truth Social and social media afterwards. They knew what they were doing. They knew that the order was kill them all. They knew that there were 2 people clinging onto the boat. They struck it again and blew them up. They knew that, and they celebrated it. I'm not joking. This is a serious story, and I could very easily see people getting prosecuted for this conduct, because this is no joke. This is serious, serious stuff, and people have been prosecuted for less. So look, I will leave the video there. Thank you so much for watching. I just had to talk about this story. It is so sickening. Make sure to subscribe down below, drop a like on the video, comment, let me know what you think about the story. Of course, I definitely want to hear from you folks on this one. And as I always say, have an amazing rest of your day, and we will talk soon.